Parallel structure means using the same pattern or structure of words to convey two or more ideas on the same level of importance. For example, I can say that I like eating, sleeping, and running, or I can say that I like to eat, to sleep, or to run. Both of these sentences are examples of parallel structure because I use the same configuration of words to convey these three equal actions. With that in mind, let's look at what constitutes a parallel structure error. The formal definition of a parallel structure error is a structural inconsistency made when expressing two or more ideas of the same level of importance. What this basically sums up to is a failure to uphold parallel structure. So if I were to say, I like eating, sleeping, and to run, I'm committing a parallel structure error. Keep in mind that although parallel structure can seem like a stylistic device, parallel structure errors are always considered to be grammatical errors on the SAT. If you come across an underlined parallel structure error, always mark it incorrect or choose an option that will correct it. There will be 4 types of sentences that potentially introduce parallel structure errors on the SAT. These sentences are comparisons, lists, double actions, and concessions. Parallel structure errors occur with the most frequency in comparison sentences, so let's take a look at these first. Comparison errors are unique in that they're not purely stylistic like the rest of parallel structure errors. They also tend to make no sense. Comparison errors make the mistake of comparing two incomparable objects. Let's take a look at an example. This sentence reads, "The eerie songs of humpback whales, often lower in pitch and longer than birds, are intriguing to scientists partly because whales have no functional vocal cords." The sentence is comparing one object to be lower in pitch and longer than another object. We identify the first object to be the songs of humpback whales, and the second object to be birds. Does it make sense to say that something is lower in pitch and longer than birds? Clearly, this is a comparison error. What this sentence means to say is that the songs of humpback whales are lower in pitch and longer than the songs of birds. Therefore, to correct this sentence, the phrase "longer than birds" should be changed to "longer than those of birds." Choice D does exactly this, and that's why it's the correct solution to this question. Alright, let's move on to the next type of sentence that incorporates parallel structure errors. The list sentence. The example sentence, "I like to eat, to sleep, and to run," is an example of a list sentence. In these kinds of sentences, all 3 objects or ideas that are listed out in the sentence should have parallel structure. Let's take a look at an example. This sentence reads, "The spirit of the honor code to which each student subscribes requires academic honesty, respectful behavior, and it demands responsibility in action." Let's identify the 3 objects listed out in this sentence. The first is academic honesty, the second is respectful behavior, and the third is it demands responsibility in action. The inconsistent structure of the third object should stick out like a sore thumb. In order to make it conform to the structure of the first 2 objects, you're going to want to change "it demands responsibility in action" to an adjective followed by a noun. This can be done by changing "it demands responsibility in action" to "responsible action." This is exactly what choice B does, and that's why it's the correct answer. The corrected sentence reads, "The spirit of the honor code to which each student subscribes requires academic honesty, respectful behavior, and responsible action." Alright, let's move on to the next kind of sentence that incorporates parallel structure errors. Double action sentences involve one subject being assigned 2 actions. So an example of a double action sentence is, "I eat and I sleep." In double action sentences, the structure of both actions should always be the same, or else you will have a parallel structure error. In this example, the sentence reads, "When we read, we first form innumerable impressions, and then those impressions are evaluated as we read on." This is a double action sentence because 2 actions are assigned to us when we read. The first is form innumerable impressions, and the second is then those impressions are evaluated. So obviously these two actions don't match, so this is a parallel structure error. In order to correct it, we should change the second action to match the structure of the first one. We can do this by changing those impressions are evaluated to evaluate those impressions. That matches the form of form innumerable impressions. So the corrected sentence would read, when we read, we first form innumerable impressions and then evaluate those impressions as we read on. That's what choice B proposes, so that's why it's the correct answer. Alright, let's move on to our final type of sentence. Parallel structure errors occur least frequently in concession statements, but it's still useful to know what concessions are. A concession is typically made up of an original assertion followed by a concession or admittance that will either weaken or make an exception to the original assertion made. The assertion and concession are usually separated by the words but, however, or yet, so reading any of these words indicate that you may be reading a concession statement. In concession statements, the assertion and concession should always be formatted consistently. So if there isn't any parallel structure, that needs to be corrected. This example reads, readers of the novice writer's recent book have said that it is at once frustrating because of its chaotic structure, but its originality is still a delight. The word but indicates that this is a concession. The original assertion made is that the book is frustrating because of its chaotic structure. However, it is conceded that its originality is still a delight. As you can tell, the assertion and concession don't have the same structure, so this should be corrected. In order to correct this sentence, the phrase, its originality is still a delight, should be changed to match the structure of frustrating because of its chaotic structure. This can be done by changing it to delightful because of its originality. The newly corrected sentence would read, readers of the novice writer's recent book have said that it is at once frustrating because of its chaotic structure and delightful because of its originality. That's exactly what choice E does, so that's why it's the correct answer. So those are the 4 types of sentences that will potentially have parallel structure errors on the SAT. When looking for parallel structure errors, watch out for comparison, list, double action, and concession statements. Here's an identifying the sentence error question from the official SAT study guide that has a parallel structure error. The sentence reads, in the United States, the industrial use of plastics is greater than steel, aluminum, and copper combined. It's easy to assume that this parallel structure error will occur under the list sentence category because steel, aluminum, and copper are all listed out in this sentence. However, notice that all of these 3 nouns are in the same structure, so in this case, that's not what it is. Now turn your attention to the phrase greater than. Greater than signals that this is a comparison. Let's identify what 2 objects are being compared. The first one is the industrial use of plastics. The second is steel, aluminum, and copper. Let's think about whether this makes sense or not. This sentence is saying that the industrial use of plastics is greater than these 3 metals. Does that make sense? What the sentence probably means to say is that the industrial use of plastics is greater than the industrial uses of steel, aluminum, and copper. This is a parallel structure error occurring in a comparison sentence. That's why choice D is correct.